everyone, welcome to this Roundup. From the beginning of human times, individuals across nations have historically been sharing their assets for use with the local network like friends and families. While sharing has always been a common practice among friends and family in recent years, the concept of sharing has moved beyond friends and family into a cost effective business and economic model that is rapidly going global. That is mainly because digital technologies are disrupting traditional models and are allowing individuals and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia to go beyond ownership concept and give them the ability to share. As a result, from information to intelligence, cars to homes, softwares to clouds, satellites to space stations, tools to technology, each one of us is now able to share our assets from across cyberspace, geospace, and space. It's short referred to as CGS and benefit from it. So when the emerging sharing economy allow each one of us to financially benefit from our underused or unused assets from across CGS, we are seeing the beginning of innovative business models of shared services and shared products where the technology platforms are enabling asset owners and those seeking to access those assets to find each other. Since the sharing economy is rapidly growing from a fundamental concept to a profitable powerhouse and is reshaping our economic models at a lightning pace, it is important to evaluate where we are heading and what will be the implications of sharing economy on the society. To discuss the rise of sharing economy further, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Roey Tzezana to this roundup. Dr. Tzezana is a senior scientific advisor of Obvislim, senior advisor to the World Future Society, and scientific advisor to Tukey, the new sharing economy. He is based in United States. Welcome, Dr. Tzezana. We are honored to have you on Risk Roundup.
Hi, I'm honored to be here.
Wonderful, Dr. Tzezana. So let's talk about the asset west before we go on with the sharing economy discussion. Now, irrespective of knowledge, information, or physical assets, unused value is wasted value. What is the state of waste you see across nations, its government, industries, and organizations and academia today?
So what we see today is that knowledge and data and information become the most important things, basically, in the world. And assets, infrastructure, vehicles are becoming less important. What's important is now the layer of information that connects between all of those. And we're seeing it in the sharing economy, in Uber, in Airbnb, in other companies that connect between those who have assets and those who have infrastructure and want to share them with others, basically want to rent the external layer, the higher layer of information. So the sharing economy is basically what allows people to use their assets in the most efficient way possible.
That is very true. It is a sharing of assets. Now, there are a lot of people who question whether it's actually sharing because people think that sharing means that you are riding a car and you just let someone else, ride with you. And that is actually sharing. But when there is a company in a layer between the person who is sharing his asset or her asset and the person who is trying to access the asset, there is a, middle layer involved and there is always a price involved. So there are a lot of people questioning whether it's actually sharing, that it should be called access economy, but that is a topic of debate for another time. Now the sharing, as you just discussed, as we talked about it briefly in the introduction, is that it's not a new concept. It has been happening over the years from the beginning of human times. So from your assessment, what exactly drove the fundamentals of sharing to go beyond the local network to global?
Well, it's all a result of several driving forces. First of all, we have better connectivity more than ever. 95% of the world population has cellular reception. The number of subscriptions to cellular networks around the world is over 7 billion subscriptions. And what this means is that we can all share resources at a better time resolution, which means that even if I have a vacant spot in my car for just 10 minutes, I can immediately report on that using my smartphone. And if someone is interested in that seat, in that position, he'll be able to contact me immediately. The other force that is being manifested is that we are all becoming smarter and wealthier and richer. And the level of water rises for everyone. So more people than ever before have cars which they can share with each other. More people have apartments of their own. And people know reading and writing. The percentage of literate people around the world is around 85% for adults and around 91% for the youths. So suddenly people can take part in this new economy, and they can understand how to price their assets and how to put them for sale or for rent online. And the last driving force that we see is that of automation, because automation enables the sharing economy companies. It enables them to connect between lots of people at a dramatically lowered cost in proportion to what was required just a few years ago. For example, think about Uber. Uber is all about automated algorithms that connect between the drivers to their potential passengers, that tell the drivers how to move around on the road, that collects information about the drivers and about the passengers in the form of stars and the form of ratings. Just think about it, because if Uber were in existence 10 or 20 years ago, think about the fact that Uber would have had to hire people to call each and every driver and passenger and ask them, what did you think about your driver? What did you think about your passenger? Obviously, that would not have been possible. So because of automation, we can suddenly collect information and ratings about everyone who are taking part in the sharing economy. And once we have that information, we know whether we can trust people or not. So we're actually using automation to increase people's trust of each other.
Yes, that is an excellent point. That
economy.
yes, sorry about that. You're absolutely right that we are able to increase the trust in the system, and the connectivity is at the center of this. Without the connected computers and computer code and internet in cyberspace, we would not have been able to reach this point that we have these evolving models by which we can share. And I mean, if you look at the asset all across nations in forms of not only just the data and information or physical assets like homes and cars and all that, but there's so much unused assets in terms of human resources, idle time, free time. There's so much that can be used into and bring them into the central pool in the economic model all across nations. So there is a huge potential with this, technology that is providing us, and the automation. You are right about that. That without automation, a lot of these things would have been so difficult.
Yeah, I would also say that the sharing economy, in a very real way, will help us save the earth. Because as we know, we keep on using resources. We keep on depleting the Earth's resources. We keep on manufacturing new cars, building new homes, while at the same time we have so much infrastructure and so many assets that are not utilized to the best effect. Just think about what would have happened if all the cars on the roads in a city had their entire capacity full with passengers. You would have had a quarter, maybe even less than that, of the number of cars you currently have on the roads. So the sharing economy allows us to make the best use in the resources that we have right now.
Yes, absolutely. And then we don't waste resources, and we don't create the burden on our resources. So that is a really good beneficial point that the sharing economies bring. But there are also a lot of people who get concerned that the whole idea of owning assets, over the years, every individual or was trying to buy homes, trying to buy cars, and that was kind of like playing as a buffer, for them when there are hard times. So now people are thinking that because these sharing economies are going so global and it's on such a large scale, that only few people would own the assets, and that probably would take away the resilience power of the for the individuals in times of bad. That how would they cope up, because they won't have any assets left. At the same time, we are also seeing that young generation, the millennials, they don't like to own the cars, or
Yeah.
just have the burden of driving and all that. I mean, I believe me, if I don't have to drive, I don't want to drive. So it is a very effective model, because then you can sit in the back of the car, you can read, you can do a lot of progress, productive things. You don't have to waste your time and energy on driving and keeping an eye on the road. But again, there are a lot of concerns also growing. But basically, the sharing economies allows individuals or groups to make money and financially benefit from any of their underused or available assets. Where physical assets, I see that right now there is a lot of attention on the physical assets like homes and cars. But is only the physical assets that are being shared right now, or do you see a trend towards sharing the digital assets or assets in the space also?
We're definitely seeing a movement from ownership to subscription, from owning something to using it one time, two times, three times, and then letting it go. And we're seeing it not only in the sharing economy, so to speak, but we're also seeing it well in every possible field. For example, when I have a Kindle, I have a Kindle, I don't buy the book. I pay for the book. I download it to my Kindle, but it's still in Amazon's possession. If Amazon wants to delete the book on my Kindle, it can do so immediately. And that can be quite frightening, because it moves us to a different kind of society, one in which the people lose much of their power, their economic power, to influence the governments and to influence the companies and the firms that provide them with these services. So the sharing economy, we are calling it today the sharing economy, as if we are all sharing from the good of our hearts. And obviously that's completely wrong. We are not sharing. We are selling, we are renting, we are hiring, we are offering our merchandise and our assets and our wares to other people for a certain price. This price is much lower than what it used to be, because in the past nobody would have thought about having so many people providing these services. Only the big companies could have provided these services. But what happens now is that the big companies create platforms, or I'll say it differently. A startup creates a platform, Airbnb, Uber, and etc. And on this platform, millions and millions of people can offer their services. And what happens very quickly, what we see in the digital world, is that we are moving towards a one winner takes all phenomenon, where there is only one Uber. And they keep telling us that, oh, Uber has a Lyft as a competitor. That's nonsense. Lyft does not come anywhere close to the level of Uber. We see Airbnb. There are no competitors to Airbnb. Airbnb bought all of its competitors. There are no competitors to Facebook. There are no real competitors to Google. More than 80% of the search volume in the United States and probably in other countries around the world is all Google. So what we see is that the sharing economy firms in the digital world, they are exhibiting the one winner takes all effect. And what that means is that they are those startups, young startups that just arrived 10 years ago, they are becoming whales. They are becoming huge platforms. And we have to ask, who is controlling these platforms? For example, let's say that Airbnb doesn't like me. And maybe I don't know. There's been an incident in the United States where a racist woman refused to host somebody, and Airbnb, quite rightly so, by the way, basically forbade that person from hosting other people. And I say again, I think this is a proper punishment. But then again, what happens when Airbnb doesn't like me? Let's say that I said bad things about Airbnb. I don't like Airbnb. I think they are bad for society. Airbnb can ban me from its services, and it doesn't sound so bad unless you look 10 years into the future and you realize that if the one winner takes all effect continues to grow, then what's going to happen is that I basically won't be able to go to any city and find apartments at a good price. So we need to ask where does the power go to? And we've seen it with Facebook, we've seen it with Google. We're going to see it with any company that's becoming large in the digital world, because these companies are going to become leviathans. They are going to become what I call them the shark whales. Sharks, because that's what I call the big companies. They are sharks. They are quick and agile and eager for the prey. And whales, the whales are the governments. They are the ones that are supposed to take care of the citizens, but they are slow and they are cumbersome and awkward, and they don't really know technology. When you combine both of them together, you get the shark whales. Those are basically the big companies, the Google, the Facebook, the Amazon, the Apple, that already have powers that rival those of governments, of national territorial governments, because they can provide so many services, including financial services and the insurance services and the communication services, infrastructure and ISP services. When you take all of these services together, you basically get a company that can easily compete with a territorial government. But these companies are not limited to one territory; they're all over the world. And
Yes.
this brings us to a very interesting new era in human history, where I think we're starting to grow away from the idea of territorial nations and move on to different concepts of cloud organizations, of even cloud nations that we're already starting to see them happening and see them starting to be created. With companies like BitNation and others.
No, that's an excellent point you made. I mean, these are the critical risks we are facing, because as these technology providers, the technology platform providers become so powerful that
Yeah.
they can destroy, any individual's life, and they can take away their ability to rent or to, lease a car or anything, any product or service. Then that is a cause of great concern, because we don't have a system that is working right now that would look at all these data points or variables, or we don't have effective regulations. We don't have anything that would challenge those technology platform providers, so that as they become more and more powerful, and like you said, as we start seeing the cloud nations, that is a cause of great concern, because the clouds, the computer code is connecting everything in cyberspace, geospace, and space. So how are these cloud nations, from your assessment, where do you think these cloud nations are taking us, the traditional nations? Because there is definitely going to be that competition between the traditional nation and the cloud nation. And how do you see that shaping or changing the fundamentals of how the humans live and how humans work, and how is the governance model and management models and all these regulatory models or justice models, all those things, how do you think they will be impacted by this emergence of cloud nations as you're talking about?
Well, first of all, I have to say that you said it's an issue of great concern, and I agree with you. It is something of great concern to think that we need to think about. But I'll use Stuart Brand's wonderful phrase that I'm a pessimist in the short term and an optimist in the long term. And I'm pessimist in the short term because you need someone to be pessimist in the short term. You need someone to show what the problems could be and to think about what could go wrong. But I'm an optimist in the long term because if I am thinking about the problems, I will fix them. And I know we'll be able to take care of them. So that's why I'm an optimist in the long term. I think we are going to a good place altogether. And you said that if the company doesn't like me, then they can just ruin my life. But that has always been the case with governments as well. And totalitarian governments don't need any excuse, just snuff you out as soon as you, piss them off. And even in democracies, well, even in France, in Germany, in the UK, in the US, in Russia, if you can call that a democracy still, in all of those places, the government is constantly monitoring everything you do on the internet. Sometimes they need some legal excuse in order to collect your data or to look at it. But you're already under the government's thumb anyway. If the
Absolutely.
government...
I hear you on that, but now we have to worry about the big corporations.
Yeah.
So it's like more and more entities are watching us all the time.
Yeah, I know, but think about it. 300 years ago, we had the French Revolution that basically moved things away from the dictatorship, from monarchies, to democracies, to representative democracies. And that was a good step. That was, we did a good thing because we moved the power from the government to the public, a little bit, not by as much as we like to think, but a little bit. And we are going to continue this movement of this shifting of power. We're taking it more and more out of the hands of the governments, of the territorial governments, and we're moving it to other systems, other political systems that can organize people's lives. And those systems seem to be right now the large companies, again, the Google, Amazon, Apple, Uber, Facebook. By the way, Facebook has 2.2 billion people. I mean, that's the largest nation in the world. And right now, it's a complete dictatorship where you don't even know the rules. You don't even know why they're banning you in many cases. But we are moving forward. I mean, we are dealing with it. And in my recent book, I call it Rulers of the Future. That's where I conceived of the idea of cloud nations. And I said that while we are moving towards cloud nations, the idea will not be, will not reach fulfillment before we come upon perfect encryption techniques. Basically, technologies that can provide perfect, or as close to perfect as possible, encryption, so that each and every communication that is being conducted between citizens will not be available to the eyes of territorial governments. Because how do territorial governments control us? How do they rule over us? They have a monopoly in the territory. And this monopoly, it's a monopoly over force, over power, over communication. And if you want to pay your taxes, for example, to a different country than the one you are living in, good luck with that. The government will immediately find that out because they track people's, bank accounts, and they will put you in jail. That's the monopoly, the power that they have over you because you're in their territory, in the government's territory. But let's say that we can remove this power of the government to track after your transactions, to track after your communications. Suddenly, the government can't know who you are paying your taxes to. It can't know who you're getting your money from. It can't know who you are talking with. It can't know what's your identity on the online world if everything is encrypted. And once we reach that level of encryption, basically what you get is a world in which the territorial monopolies lose their power. They can't track you anymore. And if they can't track you, they will find it more and more difficult to actually enforce the rules on you in a world that is turning global and international, and in which you can work in every other country through the internet or pay your taxes to other cloud organizations through the internet. So
do you see that actually happening? Because I mean, the hope and the wish of everyone who is in the cyberspace working on the digital system is that the blockchain would provide us that decentralized network which will give us trust and transparency and accountability. And then, we want the layers of corruption and the layers of bureaucracy and the waste and abuse and everything that we are seeing in our current systems, that we will be able to get rid of it. And any new idea, innovation, and imagination is always welcoming. We want these new systems to be developing, and we want new technologies, new technology platforms, to new way of doing things, which would, at the end of the day, help the, individuals and entities to, grow, to, minimize the risk and to manage the risk, and to bring on a lot of, new opportunities, a lot of new global economic power, and new ways of doing things, and beyond our, earth, and go to cyberspace, space, and then even identify new species that we don't know exist yet. We go and explore the space and to deep space, and we have so many opportunities as this technology and platforms and technology tools, the advances in science and technology is giving us. But at the same time, as we see that, cryptocurrencies and blockchain are threatening the governments, and the encryption that you're talking about, that, it would take away the power of governments to monitor the individuals or what the communication is happening across nations, that is going to, shake them, from its very core, because they lose power. They will lose power. So how do you think that the governments are going to react to these new systems that are being developed, and the new way of doing things that are emerging, and the power slowly shifting away from them? How do you see that impacting the sharing economy in the coming years?
I think they will panic. I think the governments will panic, and I know they are already panicking. Following the Arab Spring, we've seen many countries, many governments panicking in the Middle East and in the Gulf area about what to do once they see that the power goes to the hands of the citizens, and that the citizens can collaborate and work together. So yeah, the governments will panic, and as I said, they already are. And the most, and the thing I fear most is that countries will close themselves from the internet, will create an internal internet just for them, and will close themselves from the outside world. And we're starting to see it in China, for example, with its great firewall. We're seeing a version of it in Russia that is trying to distance itself from the internet, from the World Wide Web. We're seeing it in Europe in a way that is trying to protect its citizens' data, so it doesn't let Facebook and Google share this data with the US government at the same level of ease that those companies are sharing other people's data from around the world. So this is a major concern, because if that becomes the case, then it means that the territories enforce themselves upon the cyber world, upon the digital world, that that its main power and its main advantage is in being open to everyone all over the world. And we need to understand this concern. We need to think about it. We need to think what to do about it. But the main force that I believe that will make sure that these territories, even in these territories, there will be the internet will get a foothold. the global internet, is that blockchain-based platforms like the Bitcoin, like Ethereum, like Zcash, like Monero, and so on, they enable people to send money, to transfer money between themselves. So they will enable investors in rich countries to support startups in poor countries. They will enable ideas to spread and proliferate much more quickly. And as the use of blockchain proliferates all over the world, and we're already starting to see it, what it means is that we will have a unified platform. We will have a global ledger. And once you have such a global ledger, anyone who is not part of this global ledger stays completely outside. For example, there is now a collaboration between hundreds of trucking companies and seafaring companies to create a global ledger that on which all the information about about wares that are being transported and where are all the trucks and where is all the merchandise, all of it will be written in this global ledger. And if you are on that, if you're let's say that Amazon decides to use that global ledger, or anyone wants to use it, they will know exactly where their product is. They will know, how many hours away from them it is. They will know if it got lost anywhere along the way. Once you get exposed to this level of efficiency, you will never want to go back to anything less than that. But consider that if you want this level of efficiency, then every company in the world needs to join this global ledger. You can't have 2 global ledgers or 3 global ledgers or 10 global ledgers. You want one global ledger like this. And that means that a great driving force in bringing the blockchain platforms and the internet everywhere is that of standardization and increased efficiency. If you want your merchandise, your wares to get to where you're sending them, if you want people to trust your merchants, if you want basically to grow your economy, you must open your country to the internet and to the blockchain. And once you open your country, in a way, this is a Trojan horse, because your citizens will also be able on the internet platforms, once they are fully encrypted, they will also be able to form organizations of their own, to form local governments, global governments, and to vote for representation, to create a deliberative democracy, and so on. So yeah, I'm pretty optimist about the future.
Absolutely. There is a lot of optimism in the future and the power of that future if we are able to achieve that. But see, the challenge is, like you were just talking about, that how China is becoming protectionist and they are shutting off the internet to outside, in not allowing that interconnectedness and the integrated platforms to be developed, and the cloud and the global ledger that you talked about. It's a powerful tool that we will have. We will be able to figure out, identify pretty much reasons behind all the failures that we are having over the years, why certain systems fail, why we are not able to get rid of poverty, why we are not able to cure certain diseases. To everything and anything, we will be able to have answers, because we'll have so much data on our fingertips. And with the use of automation and machine learning and deep learning, we will be able to come up with effective answers and solutions to so many complex problems. But the challenge is, from where I see, that no nation is prepared for taking the benefit or taking the advantage of such amazing innovations and technology power that's coming our way. So when the nation's leaders are not ready, see, the technology community is coming up with great technology platforms and a great way of doing new things, but just by having technology platform is not enough. We need to have so many parallel developments. That means that our nation's leaders need to be first educated, aware about all these emerging systems, and they need to then know that what are the risks emerging as the old or the current systems start fading, and as the new system starts developing, what are the risks, what kind of turbulence will happen, what kind of job losses will happen, what kind of changes will be coming to the nations, to its citizens. How will the citizens cope up with those kind of changes? Do they know how to cope up with those kind of changes? What kind of change management uh, processes and tools are in place to help the nation's citizens to cope up with that? And we don't see any of them across any nation, even in United States. That's why we see so much resistance to the advances in technology, to the development in technology, or to do new way of doing things. Right now we see resistance from everywhere. Half of our country is resistance to what is happening in our nation. To most of the nations, they are having the same issues, because the nation's leaders lack the capability to lead their nations in this technology transformation that is happening all across nations. So that's where the biggest challenge is, and that is where we need to focus if we want to see the true power of the technology that can give us, the kind of productivity that will emerge, the kind of efficiency, the kind of new models, the new way of governance or management, and how each and every big problem that we are facing across nations in the society, not only in geospace but in cyberspace and space, we will be able to resolve that if we are able to have that collective intelligence by the global ledger that you are talking about. But we lack the leadership, we lack the tools and technology and the parallel processes. So even if it seems that technology enabled sharing companies are mainly about technology and people, they are not just about technology and people. We need to focus on all these different aspects and variables. So do you see that? Do you agree that in order to harness this technology and the technology platforms and global ledger responsibly, we need proper leadership at all levels: local, national, global, across nations, is government, industries, organizations, and academia, including these technology powerhouses with their culture and ethics and proper governance models, proper management models.
Absolutely, absolutely. We need regulators. We need smart regulators. We need knowledgeable regulators. And perhaps most importantly, we need regulators who are beholden to the public and not to the big corporations, and not and not to the firms and those who can bring lobbyists to the halls of Congress around the world. But in a way, what we're seeing now is a kind of war between two paradigms. On the one hand, we have the decentralized paradigm. We have the blockchain platforms. We have the beginning of decentralization, the Facebook again. It's the beginning of decentralization. And on the other hand, we have the completely centralized governments that have become used to having all the power. And we're asking the governments, which represent the will of the people, to look after the decentralized platforms, which should also represent the will of the people. So something is not mixing properly here, because you have two systems, each of which has its advantages and disadvantages, and we must find the new balance. Basically, what we need, I would say, is we need the platforms of the future. We need the Facebook of the future, not that which is right now, which is basically a prototype of a social media, a prototype of a cloud nation, but it's actually a dictatorship. But we need the Facebook of the future, 10 or 20 years from now, which will also have the mechanisms for people to vote, to say what they want to see happening on the network, to transfer money and to help each other with basically taxes, online taxes, taxation, and insurance policies, and so on. All of these things will come, and they're already starting to appear with some blockchain initiatives, again, like BitNation, like Kleros, who are trying to create a wiki-style justice system on the cloud, so that each of us can judge each other. When I can open a dispute with you, upload it to the cloud, and Kleros automatically finds juries from around the world who can judge and decide who is right, who is wrong, and what's the penalty
I
For
don't know about that. Which organization is doing that?
called Kleros. It used to be called crowd jury. And if you think
Okay, very
about it,
interesting. I think that would be fascinating, but it also will create a lot of panic because then all the issues, are going to go on the internet and, everybody would be able to witness
no,
it.
no, no, no. This kind of system has to be supported by perfect encryption,
Ah,
and because otherwise, as you say, everyone's information will be on the cloud.
yeah,
That's not
that
something.
would be a concern, and I mean, we do want to see this kind of systems being developed because it will give us so much power to
Absolutely.
resolve conflicts, easily and in a rapid fashion. I mean, if you look at nations like India and some other nations, there are so many cases pending. I mean, it would take at least 15-20 years before judge is able
Yeah.
to see any case. So if we have this kind of system, that
Yes.
would make things so much more efficient. So that would be amazing to see that.
Yes. And
But
this is the justice, the sharing economy of justice, of the
yes,
justice.
yes, absolutely.
Think
And
about
we
it.
we
Yes.
do need that because I mean we are trying to do everyone who is working on machine learning and creating algorithms for all kinds of platforms and problems. They are doing their best, but the problem is that when the data that they are using to create those algorithms and to have the analytics based on that, if the data is flawed, then the algorithms also becomes biased. So in the sharing economy there are so many concerns about this technology enabled, and I mean these are usually unintentional. No provider or no machine learning scientist is trying to add the bias purposefully. That is not the case, but unintentionally it is coming up into these algorithms, and that is barriers to inclusion because such these hidden biases are cause of great concern. That the challenges that we had in our current systems where racism and all these kind of biases that were there, that it is also getting penetrated into this cyber system or digital systems that we are developing, and the algorithms are becoming biased. So do you think that these biased algorithms are going to create hurdles for the sharing economy, that the sharing economy will not be inclusive because of these biased algorithms?
The thing is this. Biased algorithms, there are algorithms that are not doing the work properly, that are, making mistakes. And that is something else. When it happens, we can fix them. But there are algorithms that just notice certain correlations that we don't like to think about. For example, the level of income in the United States of people and their skin color, and we don't like to think about it, but it is a fact that people of color. I wish it would be different, but people of color are usually less wealthy than Caucasian people, than white people. And the question is, what do we do now about it? Now, the algorithm could deduce very easily that because the level of income is lower, and the poorer people conduct more violent crimes. So, if you are a person of color, you also have a higher chance to conduct some kind of violent crime. So, we don't want to take you in our taxes, for example. I'm not saying that anyone is doing this, but if an algorithm would have reached this conclusion, it would be a completely logical conclusion. But is this the conclusion that we want our society to be based on? Obviously not. We want our society to be equal to be equal to everyone, to be inclusive. We want everyone to have the same opportunities and chances to promote their lives and themselves. So what we need to do is to be aware of the biases that these algorithms contain, and to simply, when these biases do not stand in contradiction to our values, we should allow them. We should consider them. We should understand what they actually mean. And sometimes we'll see that they are right, and we should go along with it. In other cases, We want to tell the algorithm, we'll tell the algorithms, ignore certain parameters, ignore a person's color of skin, ignore a person's gender, for example, ignore a person's hair or lack of hair,
Or last name or first name or
or last name or
nationality.
first
Like
name
that.
or ethnicity. And we are, excuse me, and we are seeing in some countries that algorithms are beginning to be used to create a certain social credit rating system, according to which each and every person, is ranked according to their beliefs, according to their religious beliefs, according to how many times they are praying every day. There are even things like that. And
Which nations are doing that? Is that China or somewhere else you are seeing this?
I don't want to go into names, but a quick search on the internet will show you will show you everything. And we need to consider whether we really want to encourage this kind of a social rating. And I want to, lots of people in the left in the US say that, oh no, social rating, that's horrible, that's bad, that's that's something we should object to always. But we're always rating each other.
Yes.
And so the real problem is, who is determining the parameters according to which you're being ranked? And obviously, right now, the government is defining those parameters and the criteria and the coefficients. That if you pray 5 times a day while facing Mecca, then you lose 10 points instead of gaining 5 points. So we as the public need to understand that we are going into a future in which we are all going to be rated. We are all going to be ranked all the time by everything that we do in our day-to-day life, in our house and outside the house. And we need to start to demand control over the parameters and over the algorithms. We need to demand transparency so that we'll know according to what parameters those algorithms are going to rank us. And
Yes,
if we don't
absolutely.
do that, then we are going to give the power either to the governments, and that's a bad thing. We don't want to return 300 years into the past, or we are going to give it to someone, you might say even worse, to those global companies, to cloud nations, to become cloud dictatorships without us having any say in the regime and the digital powers that control us.
No, I hear you on that. You are absolutely right that I mean, this is where we are heading. Sooner or later, it is going to happen that we all will be ranked, we all will be judged by, our behavior in the house, outside the house, everywhere. And sorry, there will be rating system, whether we like it or not, it is emerging. You are right about that. And as you said, that we do need to be very cautious about what parameters we are allowing in that rating system. Who is defining the rating system? Who is designing the rating system? That's where we'll have to be very careful, because just by praying you don't become bad. By what makes you bad, what should take your point down, what should take your point up, those are the things we should define it very carefully. And that's where I think this collective intelligence and collective capability, collective voice would play a big role, because we come from very different diverse cultures and different nations and different way of life and different way of doing things. So we need to, as the digital global age is helping us to become one big global community, it is going to take years before we all share our culture, our values, our religion. It's going to take probably centuries. So in the meantime, just because we do certain things the way we do here in the United States, or we do certain things the way nations in Middle East, do, or in Europe, or Asia or Africa, who decides and who defines what is the right way to go forward? So those are the fundamental questions that we have to be working on as we develop these new systems and new way of doing things. And these systems are for the good of the humanity. But at the same time, if we don't define and design them properly, then it is going to create chaos and it's going to create a lot of pushback and resistance. So that is something where we all need to start thinking how these visionaries and thinkers and this people who are actively trying to develop these technology platforms, and we have to make sure that future is that they start talking to each other about this, that how should we do these things, how should we create a fair system of rating. But that's a topic of another discussion, because there's so much to talk in that, and this 1 hour is not going to be enough. Let's go back to the sharing economy. How big is the sharing economy market currently, from your assessment, from based on the all the services we are providing, products that we are, physical assets that we are sharing? How big is the market?
Well, I can't talk about, each and every company in the market, obviously, but let's just look at Airbnb as an example to what happens when a company takes assets and opens them to the public. So just about Airbnb, let's see, we have more than 150 million people who are using Airbnb, and that's just in 9 years or so since Airbnb was created. We have almost 1 million people who are offering their apartments, and every night you have more than 500,000 people who are sleeping in cities all over the world using Airbnb's services. And compare that to some of the large hotel networks like Hilton, Marriott, Intercontinental. Even the largest of those only offer about 700,000 rooms all over the world, and they are never at full capacity. So what we are seeing here is that if you're opening a certain asset to the public, and that asset is owned by the public itself, you can disrupt huge industries that previously were completely immune to disruption. So Airbnb, you have Uber, etc., 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 and I would say that the sharing economy, again, it's in its diapers. It's taking its baby steps right now. And as we see technology progressing, we are going to see new kinds of sharing economy. We talked about the sharing economy, for example, of justice systems that we may soon see, because you are going to pay a few dollars to each of the jury members to get that quick justice that you want. We are going to see a sharing economy of products, because we're starting to talk about autonomous cars and autonomous drones, right? Autonomous aerial drones. And all the companies today, delivery companies today, are working on aerial drones that will be able to deliver a certain product for $1 or less, and it will take just 1 hour or so for the product to get to you. And when it costs just $1 to get a product from one side of the city to the other, suddenly you can have a sharing economy, because the price of delivering the product, that's nothing. That's almost negligible. So we are already thinking about ideas like subscriptions, like Amazon Prime for sharing products. For example, if I want a mixer, I want to bake a cake. How many times do I do that in a year? I don't know, maybe 5 times, 10 times. Why do I need to buy a mixer of my own for $500? That's a lot of money if I am only using it 5 or 10 times a year. So what's going to happen is that it's much better for me to sign up some kind of a smart contract or a subscription, whether it's with Amazon Prime or with a large network of people around the city, and to agree that if I want a mixer, I can just go to my computer, click on the button, and in 1 hour I will get the mixer driven to me or flown to me and put straight, or outside my door. I will use it, I will clean it a little, and I will put it back outside the door, click the button, and it's flown away to the next person in line. So this is a sharing economy of other products, and not just cars and rooms. As the digital technologies become more pervasive everywhere, as everyone is getting connected, as the Internet of Things keeps on progressing, we are going to be able to share everything. And by the way, I'm looking right now at my bookshelf, my bookshelves. I have all these books. Most of them I'm not reading most of the time. Why do we need even libraries when we can deliver books between each other so easily?
Yeah.
So
So you're right. I mean,
the
maybe
economy is just growing.
each subdivision we can create a library that everyone can share, and that will be collective, right? And that will also help us create that community feeling. So you are right that those kind of ideas are very welcoming. But at the same time, when we talk about products, like, let's say, we don't need the turkey fryer every single day. Only during Thanksgiving we need, right? Those kind of things. But then on that day there will be so much demand. So if there are only few turkey fryers, then there will be a challenge. So those kind of issues and processes we'll have to figure out how to do that. But at the core, the concept is amazing, that we don't need to waste our resources. I mean, here some product manufacturers are not going to like this because they won't be able to sell the products in the large numbers as they were doing before. But we also have to see why we need to waste resources. So if we do want efficiency and productivity in our system. So these are all very welcoming ideas. But as we go forward, there is a lot of, there are a lot of challenges that we'll have to overcome. I mean, we don't have enough time today to talk about all the benefits that we would get, or all the case studies, or to give an overview to our viewers and listeners about what is happening in the world, or understand the critical risks that are emerging from the sharing economy. We will hopefully, have some other session for that. But what would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners, especially those young minds and who are so driven, and they're so, trying to solve the big complex problems that the world is facing? What would you like to tell them about the power of this new concept about sharing economy, about the power of the technology tools that we have, from blockchain to machine learning to Internet of Things to big data? And what would you like to tell them, how to use these and how to create new systems? What would you like to share with them?
It will take an entire book or two or three to talk about all of these things. But I will say one very important thing. Serve the public, and the public will serve you. Create a system that can promote a certain ideology, can promote knowledge, can promote a betterment of humanity, and people will flock to it. And we are seeing it in Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great idea. It's working. Millions of people are writing knowledge for other people completely free. No one is getting paid. No one, and it's amazing. Now, if you think about it, other companies tried the wiki style as well, and there was one journal, I think it was the New York Times, but I'm not sure, that tried to create a wikitorial, a wiki editorial, that people will go onto it and will create an editorial. It was horrible. It was a horrible experiment. It died almost immediately because vandalists kept on logging in and destroying everything that other people, that good contributors, wrote there. And on Wikipedia, it doesn't happen that way because people feel like they have a purpose, they have a goal, they are serving other people. They know nobody is making a profit. And in the New York Times or whatever journal did this, people knew that somebody was making a profit off of their writing. So nobody had, really, nobody was patriotic enough, was imbued with a sense of righteous justice enough to keep on fighting the vandals. It just didn't work. So if you're asking me what is my message to the youth, to the young entrepreneurs, to the startupists and so on, I'm telling them this. Think about how to create the platforms of the future. If you want to be the big winners, you need to create platforms and allow the river of people to flow through those platforms and to serve a certain purpose. But while you're creating these platforms, be very aware of the fact that people are not fools anymore. They are not willing to do, your work for you. They will want to know that they are serving some greater good on those platforms, and if not, then they will want to be compensated as they rightfully should. So think about how to create the platforms of the future by either compensating the public or by serving a greater goal and a greater purpose that hopefully will serve all of us.
I think that is an absolutely amazing advice and the very powerful words that serve the public and public will serve you. And I see the wisdom in that because when we launched Risk Roundup in November 2016, that time, our only goal was that we want to create education awareness of the critical risk emerging, security risk emerging, because it's not just security is not about only cyber security or information security, but all the models that are changing, systems that are changing, new way of doing things are emerging, are creating so many critical risks. And people, if decision makers or individuals are not aware of it, then or nations are not aware of it, then they cannot be proactively prepared, and they all will, have existential risk to their systems, to their business models, to their nations. So that was the reason why we launched Risk Roundup, and we had amazing support in it. It's I think not even 2 years yet. Our Risk Roundup initiative. And when we launched it, we had 10,000 followers. I had 10,000 followers. Today, I have more than 150,000. That is only because of the positive message we are trying to give, what we are trying to educate and create awareness. And we are trying to serve the public, just like you said, for the greater good of the humanity. That's what we are doing, and that's what everyone across nations can do. Have a big mission, try to solve the big problem, and we can solve so many problems together, collectively. That is the power that the digital global age is giving us. All these technology tools and platforms are giving us a power of collective intelligence, collective collaboration, and there is nothing that we cannot solve or we cannot do if we all pitch in our efforts and if we all work together. So thank you so much, Dr. Tzezana, for
Thanks.
participating in Risk Roundup today. We appreciate your thoughtful insight on sharing economy, and our global viewers and listeners would benefit tremendously from the understanding you provided on the state of sharing economy and the benefits and the powerful systems that we can develop. Even if a single individual or entity can understand the forces behind the sharing economy and is able to innovate based on the understanding they received from this discussion we had today, this Risk Roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So as the sharing economy contributes to some of the most profound innovations in recent times, and while focus must remain on improving trust and transparency, it is important that we evaluate the broader security risks emerging from the sharing economy model. Risk groups, cybersecurity, geosecurity, and space security risk research centers are created for these very reasons to identify, evaluate, and manage the risk facing NGIOA and CGS, that means nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia in cyberspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they all work together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. It is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts fit into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security, so if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the Risk Roundups, to watch the Risk Roundup videos, or hear the Risk Roundup podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayshree, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.